We had the first African disciples at that time. There was 3 or 4 of them living with Srila Prabhupada, living in the house with Prabhupada. And so Prabhupada one day called for Brahmananda to come to the room, and he said, "Where are my clothes?" So Prabhupada said, "Well, I don't know. What happened?" He said, "Well, yesterday the servant came, the African servant. I gave him my clothes to wash, and he said he would bring them in." So then they called the African servant, so he came in. He said, "Where are my clothes?" So he said, "I don't know. I washed them, I put them on the line, and now they're gone." So Prabhupada said, "Oh, someone has stolen my clothes?" So Brahmananda said, "Well, sometimes there's thieves, and we didn't have the back door locked, so maybe they came in and stole the clothes," because Prabhupada had all these silk clothes. So they must have thought it was valuable and stole it. So Prabhupada laughed. He said, "Oh, they are stealing even these pieces of silk from a sannyasi." So he had 2 of the shoulder pad, the shoulder pieces of cloth. So he put one over the top and the other one on the bottom, and his legs were sticking through, and it was very uncomfortable. So then the next morning, he has Bhagavatam class, and all the African disciples come in to sit down and hear Prabhupada give Bhagavatam class. So Prabhupada's sitting there looking at the book, and he looks up and he says, "You're wearing my shirt. You're wearing my dhoti. You're wearing my top." And Brahmananda got furious. He started disrobing them in front of Prabhupada. He's taking off the shirts. He's taking off the dhotis. They're going, "Get what? You took the spiritual master's clothes? What's the matter with you?" And Prabhupada was laughing and laughing. And Prabhupada was hysterical. He's just sitting here like, "Oh, they have taken my clothes. Look there." He thought it was actually humorous that they were all wearing his clothes.
Twice I wrote to him, and I asked him if I could just be a Sankirtan devotee. And twice he wrote back, "No, that your specific talent is painting, so you should do that. But even in spiritual life, variety makes one more fit for work, so you can go on Sankirtan sometimes." Then, in 1974, when Prabhupada was making so many letters of glorification to the book distributors, I also started feeling really left out. You know, he would say that just 2 devotees, he wrote one letter, I think, to the Chicago temple, that only 2 devotees, and at that time devotees meant there were 150 devotees in a temple. Only 2 devotees should stay back and take care of the deities, and everyone else should go out on book distribution. Everyone should go out all day and then come back for 1 meal a day. And right or wrong, I never questioned my spiritual master, and he always stressed this book distribution. So I was pretty glum. And at that time again, I wrote to him and asked if we could do that. And he said, "Just because I write something to one person, it doesn't mean that it's the same for everybody. Making pictures for the books is the same as distributing them." So he always rejected my proposals.
There were some other things that happened. I remember they interviewed Prabhupada because he had been at a big pandal. And so the BBC was interviewing him. And what had happened was that previously, just before he had started the lecture program, the country next to us, Tanzania, the communists had taken over. And they had a midnight session of Congress, and the next day there was a law passed that no one owned property in the state of Tanzania anymore. All the property was now owned by the state, and you had to pay rent to the state. That you had no ownership. And Prabhupada was furious. he said that this was tantamount to, this was thievery. This was out and out stealing. That people work hard, they earn money, they buy property, they develop an estate, and then the government just steals it from them like rogues. He said these are the worst rogues and thieves and rascals, he said. And at that time, the BBC, one day during this, they interviewed him. And they said, you know, what is your message? And he started talking about, he said, my message is that I want to kick out all these rogues and rascals and thieves and these politicians. They're all rascals, he said. There are no good politicians. They're all rogues. The whole world is filled with rogues and thieves. They are stealing the hard-earned money of the people. They are stealing their land. They are stealing their lifeblood. He said they're bloodsuckers. And Prabhupada was so vehement. He said a real king is the protector of the people. He said a real king will see that everyone is living nicely, that all people have food, that all people have clothing, that all people have care and attention and medical needs. Everything that is needed will be provided by the king. The king takes so much care and responsibility that if anyone dies, he feels personally responsible that they have died too young, or if the son dies before the father, he feels that it is personal responsibility for such events. And here these men, they are just stealing. He said there are no qualified people to be king in this world. We need a qualified king. He should have honesty and decency and integrity. Prabhupada was talking about all the qualities of a king, like Maharaj Yudhisthira, like Ram, like, you know, and he was going on and on. So the man said, do you see that there's anybody in the world that has such qualifications that could be king of the world? And just when he said that, the guy who had the videotape, the tape ran out. But the guy who was interviewing didn't know it. And Prabhupada looked at him, put his cane on the ground, and he said, yes, me. Just like that. And he was qualified to be king of the world. And the look on the interviewer's face was a complete shock. But Prabhupada realized that nobody else in the world had the qualifications, that only the pure devotee could do this.
They came led by Kinchana Krishnadas Babaji when I was there, a month or so before he departed, and Prabhupada said, so now, please forgive me for all my offenses. Now the war is over. You please try to help them in Krishna consciousness. And Babaji Maharaj was quick to say, no, you have not offended anyone. What all you have done in the name of Guru Maharaj in preaching, you cannot make offense. It was very charming, very endearing, and Prabhupada would speak harshly about his godbrothers, and you have to understand it why, for what reason, circumstance, time. Some of them were inimical, but even the inimical ones. There was one who was inimical at one time in Prabhupada's estimation, and Prabhupada sent me to honor his Vyasa Puja in Vrindavan. After he had departed and the Vyasa Puja was being celebrated, Prabhupada sent me with some of the sannyasis to go and observe that. I thought Prabhupada didn't like this fellow. So that doesn't run very deep, really. What runs deep in the heart of Prabhupada or any Param Vaishnav, Shuddha Vaishnav, like that, is love. So to speak of loving people in general, devotees, and devotees of the same banner, godbrothers, this we should know. We should understand this, because we have readily our own experience now amongst our godbrothers. Differences. We may speak strongly about one another. But if we're carrying on nicely with the mission, we also must have some deep appreciation for those who are also carrying on, and a tear for those who are not. We're not against them. So I think that Prabhupada very much demonstrated this, and if we didn't see that, we didn't see Prabhupada. As much as he criticized some of them, he loved them very deeply, and it came out at different times. And if you know the philosophy, then he was not just a politician, just patronizing, saying something nice about this one or that one. When he glorified Keshav Maharaj with a tear in his eyes at that notification of the disappearance of Keshav Maharaj from the world, I think in 1969, Prabhupada was in Seattle, he got a telegram of his disappearance from the world. He gave a talk with tear in his eye about Keshav Maharaj, and he cited the verse of Das Goswami, to glorifying how Sanatana Goswami had taken him out, dragged him forcibly to such a life of renunciation. So he had deep feelings for them, deep love.
Once in Boston, he was telling me something brilliant. I was sitting in his darshan room, and I said, "Gee, Swamiji, you know everything." So he said, "Unless one knows everything, how can he be a teacher?" And then another time he was saying something brilliant, and I said the same thing. "You know everything." So he put his head down and he said, "I have done nothing extraordinary. I am simply a canvasser for the disciplic succession."